pollination. Pollination is the process of transferring pollen from the anther to the stigma so that the plant is able to reproduce and make new little seeds so that more flowers can grow. Now, there are different types of flowers. There are flowers that are able to self-pollinate, or there are flowers that require cross-pollination. Some flowers are able to self-pollinate, so it means that they don't really need the help of insects. However, because a plant doesn't really have any moving parts, like it doesn't have an arm that can just reach and grab something and move it over, it still needs to rely on the elements of the earth. So for example, self-pollination can happen through wind. So for an example here, we know that the anthers create lots of pollen. Then the flower relies on the wind to move that pollen into the air. And then some of the pollen, hopefully, gets stuck on the sticky stigma. And then we know that the pollen goes down the pistil into the ovary and it's able to reproduce. And that is self-pollination. Now, cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is when plants use insects to help them pollinate. It's important to note that it's not just bees that help pollination. There's other insects such as butterflies and moths that are also really helpful. But today I'm just going to show you cross-pollination using the bee. So what makes the sticky stigma so sticky is yummy nectar. Bees love to drink nectar because that helps them with building their homes. So then the bee goes flying bzzz, and then gets attracted by the beautiful petals. Oh, what a beautiful coloured petal. And then the bee drinks the nectar from the pistil. And as they're drinking, the pollen that is stuck on the end of the anthers gets stuck to them. In their hind legs, they also have a pollen sac, so the pollen is compacted on there very easily for transport. And then they go and get attracted to another flower. Bzzz. Oh, beautiful petals over here too! And then, as they're flying around, the pollen gets stuck on another stigma. Now, because bees are so hairy and they're working really hard, sometimes they come across a plant with lots of pollen. And this happens. They get pollen stuck all over them. This is actually really helpful for the environment because bees unintentionally, which means by accident, are just dropping pollen all over the place. And then they drop pollen onto other stigmas so that the plants are being pollinated. It's really helpful. Now, typically, bees are only attracted to the same types of flowers. So, for example, this bee loves this type of flower the best, whereas another bee is attracted to a different type of flower. So I kind of think of it how this bee's favourite colour is purple, so that's why it really, really loves these purple flowers, because that type of pollen is only useful for that type of flower. So if this bee was dropping it off at, say, a dandelion, it wouldn't really help it pollinate. So now you know that there are two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination.